The man who owns 9 NBA championship rings has some strange ways of getting his team's attention. He smokes evil spirits out of the locker room, and he calls upon what he says is his feminine side.
What's your feminine side?
It has to do a lot with, opening up your heart space and seeing people from where they're at.
But Phil Jackson is no softy. As you'll see, he is not afraid to punish the biggest stars in the game.
If you don't play team basketball...
Sit down.
Yes. I'm willing to take a loss if it means that we get better because of it.
There are very few coaches in America as successful as Phil Jackson. And as our Carol Marin found out, he wins basketball games with some methods that may surprise you.
Phil Jackson has been known to walk into basketball practice beating a tom-tom, and he, from time to time, burns a kind of incense that smells like marijuana. The tom-tom is to get his team's attention. As for the incense, we'll let him explain that in a moment. It's all part of how he deals with a generation of young basketball millionaires he's charged with turning into champions. This master of the game has already won more NBA championships than any active coach. What makes him so successful? See for yourself. Before the game begins, as the Lakers take the floor, in LA, the hip are happening and the famous are gathering. And back in the bowels of the locker room, Phil Jackson is methodically preparing to walk out of the tunnel and onto the court, precisely 60 seconds before the game begins. It's part of Jackson's ritual.
I try not to touch anybody. That's the only thing that bothers me is people reaching out from the stands that want to touch me. There's a certain amount of energy that I feel I don't want to give off. I don't want to touch anybody to give that away. This is what I'm at. This is where I'm focused on the court. It's not the distraction right now of the fans.
If that sounds more new age than NBA, just wait. The man who owns 9 NBA championship rings, 2 as a player and 7 as a coach, has some strange ways of getting his team's attention.
But, there are things that I do that I think are different and unique. And one of them is that I will do what's called smudging a locker room, with either sage or sweetgrass, which is...
It's something Jackson says he learned from time spent with the Lakota Sioux in North Dakota.
So I'll, say I think it's about time to smudge or to use some smoke in a locker room and change the air quality in there.
When's the first time you ever did that?
Maybe about 5 years ago, maybe longer. The players, of course, had a good time. They had a good laugh about it because there's something about the acritic smoke that smells like it might be marijuana.
Now they go in, they win the championship.
John Sally knows all about Jackson's coaching techniques. He played for him in Chicago and again last year in L.A.
What's up, baby?
That's why we asked Sally to go with us to a recent Lakers game to get a better understanding of what Jackson does to get his teams to win, including that smudging of the locker room.
He walked through, especially when we lost 2 games in a row or lost a game that we shouldn't have lost. And he would walk through and he would, almost like the Catholics do when they walk in, dominant,
like a priest with incense?
That's smudging. Evil spirits don't like to smoke. It's the positive spirits that you awaken within the body. What's up, brother? How you living?
Watch a game with John Sally and you'll learn other Jackson tricks, including what Sally says is Jackson's wordless way of communicating with players. A mind meld, you might call it.
If you ever see him staring, he's not staring at a guy like a boxer. He's literally talking to him on a higher plane. He's trying to meditate his words to him, trying to get into wherever he's at and try to connect spiritually with him. He's really doing that.
You believe that?
I'm sure of it.
You know, there are people who are going to be listening to this who are going to say to themselves, this is nuts.
Right. And those people don't have these. Oh, did I blind you?
And that's the point. John Sally won 2 of his 4 championship rings playing for Jackson. And in the NBA, the ring is the thing.
And the Chicago Bulls have won their first ever NBA championship.
In Chicago, Jackson's Bulls won 6 titles. And while Michael Jordan may get most of the credit, Jordan didn't win the NBA's biggest game until Jackson became his coach. In Los Angeles, he did it again. In his first season, Jackson's team won the championship. That's why players who might be reluctant converts don't question, at least openly, a coach who says to be successful, he must balance his masculine side with his feminine side. Heart space is what Jackson calls it. What's your feminine side?
And it has to do a lot with, opening up your heart space and seeing people from where they're at, have a lot of sympathetic ear to their plights as people. There is the time to be tough, and there's also a time to really kind of touch those other areas, spiritual, emotional, and intellectual.
Run wide, Rick. Run wide.
But toughness is a big part of Jackson's success. He says his ultimate weapon is deciding who plays and who stays on the bench, and he's not afraid to use it. We watched it happen in Philadelphia, where Jackson took his entire first string, including Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, out of one of the season's biggest games. It was the start of the fourth quarter, the Lakers were down by 12, and they were sent to the sidelines.
I didn't like the way we were playing, and as a result of how we were playing, I felt that I had to make a statement, and the statement was, if you don't play team basketball,
Sit down.
yes, I'm willing to take a loss if it means that we get better because of it.
Shaquille O'Neal, who had gone 7 seasons without a championship, lobbied the Lakers to hire Jackson. You were once quoted as saying that you felt that Phil Jackson was your white father.
Somebody once told me that somewhere in the world there's somebody that looks like you and acts like you. And Phil Jackson is a white version of my father. Disciplinarian, bad back, played the game, understands the game, says what's on his mind, no matter what.
All right, let's do the high screen roll. This is their need situation.
And here's the key to what Jackson teaches. It is total teamwork, a thing called the triangle offense, where on the court, each player is asked to give up that which to him is most important, the ball.
This is a game I try to coach also, in which everybody gets the ball and everybody moves the ball and everybody has a feel for the ball. We have this idea of this is a community game, what we run as a system, and then we can live this community life.
And its message is unselfishness.
Its message is that your attachment to each other.
This season, that message has been tested. The Lakers superstars, Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, have been in a running battle over who would be the team's leader, who gets the ball, who gets the shot. At a game last week, it even went as far as Shaquille O'Neal's father heckling Kobe Bryant from the stands, calling him a ball hog. For Phil Jackson, it serves to underscore what he believes is one of the NBA's biggest problems, its star system, and why this year he chose to skip one of the NBA's biggest events. Did you watch the All-Star game?
No, I didn't.
What did you do?
I went to a movie. I saw Castaways.
And it was better than watching the All-Star game on some level.
The All-Star game is kind of a slap in the face to basketball by making it a game of only superstars who only play one-on-one. Basically, they don't play a conceptualized game where 5 people play together. And that's the goal of a coach, is to get 5 people to play together as one.
There's something else that bothers Jackson. He believes the NBA is drafting players who are too young and too unprepared to manage the basic details of daily living.
A number of players, we have to hire housekeepers, cooks, people to make sure they can, know how to feed themselves. And it's not just McDonald's. This is about being able to live a complete life and knowing how to do that. You don't win in the NBA with players that are immature.
So if you could hand down a decree and make it stick, would you say nobody comes to the NBA?
Until 21. It's a man's game. It's not for boys. No boys allowed, the NBA.
But you haven't had your way.
Well, the league hasn't taken it in a real responsible way and said we will deny people the access to this league until they're 21. I'm afraid our society is going to say this kid's going to be a 7-footer. We'll sign them up when they're 15.
Phil Jackson grew up playing basketball. His mother and father were Pentecostal ministers. Sports was about the only outside activity they allowed. By the time he got to the NBA in 1967, he was no longer Pentecostal but Buddhist, and he was the NBA's resident flower child, a rebel who grew his hair long and protested the war in Vietnam. Jackson, as a second-string forward for the Knicks, earned just $13,000 a year.
Using Shaquille O'Neal's new contract, if you take his salary and you calculate it based on playing 48 minutes a game over the course of 82 games a year, you want to guess how much he makes a minute?
On the court, a minute. I couldn't guess. $2,000 a minute?
$8,000 a minute.
Great minutes.
Using that formula, he makes more in 2 minutes than you made your whole first year playing for the Knicks.
Minute and a half is what he makes what I paid him. It's remarkable.
You make $6 million. Is that too much?
Yeah, I think anything that anybody makes in this country that's more than the president is probably too much.
I have a very easy lifestyle.
Today, he's living on the beach in Southern California, sporting a new designer hairstyle and a soul patch on his chin. He's also romantically involved with Lakers Vice President Jeannie Buss, a 39-year-old one-time Playboy model whose dad owns the team. How do you react when they give him heat for being in love with the boss's daughter?
I think we're not Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston. You know, we're two adults who have lived long lives and had experiences. I really don't understand the fascination.
On the court these days, the fascination is with Jackson as much as the men he coaches. And Hollywood's glitterati turn out to watch, not just Shaq and Kobe, but the man they hope will turn L.A. into the dynasty his Chicago team once was.
It was written somewhere that 1 championship in Hollywood equals 6 championships in the Midwest because of all the play that it gets, because it's Hollywood.
That's a great quote. I like that a lot. I don't know how true that is, and we'll see how it works because it's transient. Glory is really transient here. It's here today and gone tomorrow. They're on to the next picture.
Phil Jackson's addiction to basketball has carried a very high price. Physically, his walk tells it all. Bad knees, bad hips, bad back. Basketball has also left this 55-year-old father of 5 with 2 broken marriages. His second one to wife June is just ending after 25 years. He says in his newly published book, More Than a Game, that when he was offered the Lakers job, June Jackson asked him to choose basketball or her.
You're talking about your marriage, and you say, June felt that I was unable to commit to my relationship or my family because my career was too important to me. She saw me mired in my fame and my day-to-day habits, a prisoner of my own past.
Well, I wrote those words, so, I can vouch that, that is what, she felt. And unfortunately, I couldn't convince her otherwise. I mean, I carry this desire of my team or my group to be the best with me 24 hours a day.
And it's those hours in practice that Jackson says he values the most, where he and his team try and connect in a way that's as much about life as it is basketball.
The most important thing that they learn is that they play together. Because if they play for themselves, which is the allure, that they become disjointed and disengaged from each other.
Is it possible that you in your own way have become a minister as your mom and dad were ministers?
That's succinctly what I would say. It's just a group of 12 instead of, 200.
The 12 apostles.
Well, that's always what I told my mom.